Adna's hand froze in midair. The room was too quiet, unnaturally so. The old standing fan pushed warm air across the small living space, humming like it was trying to cover a secret. Somewhere behind her, a pot of stew bubbled gently on a single burner, but Adna couldn't smell it. She couldn't feel the heat either. Her eyes were locked on the photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. Framed, clean, protected. Her heart slammed violently against her ribs. "That's my husband," she whispered. Her voice sounded unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. The photograph showed James, slightly younger maybe, but unmistakably him. That same relaxed smile, that same confident posture. The face she woke up beside every morning was staring back at her from the wall of her housemaid's cramped living room. Not on a phone, not hidden in a drawer, displayed like he belonged there. "Why?" Adna breathed, taking one slow step closer, her heels clicking sharply against the cracked tiles. "Is my husband's picture hanging in your house?" Behind her, plastic rattled. Ella froze near the doorway, a small bowl clutched tightly in her hands. Her fingers trembled so badly the bowl nearly slipped. "Ma, I can explain," Ella stammered. Adna turned slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were not. Hurt and disbelief twisted together beneath her controlled expression. "Explain what?" she asked quietly. "Explain why James Anderson is on your wall like a family member." Ella swallowed hard. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Adna looked back at the photograph. It wasn't old or damaged. Someone had wiped the glass recently. Someone cared enough to protect it. A cold weight settled deep in her chest. "Who are you to him?" Adna whispered. Ella's mouth opened, and the world shifted backward. That morning had begun like every other flawless day in Adna's life. Sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the Anderson Heights mansion, bouncing off marble floors polished to perfection. The air smelled of fresh bread, coffee, and quiet efficiency. Staff moved silently, trained to exist without being noticed. Adna sat at the long dining table, scrolling through financial reports on her tablet. Billionaire, CEO, investor, yet she wore no flashy jewelry, just a simple silk blouse, tailored trousers, and a gold watch worth more than most people's homes. Across from her sat James, her husband of 10 years, calm, handsome, effortlessly confident. "You're already working," James teased, smiling over his phone. "Madam Billionaire, won't you rest today?" Adna smirked. "If I rest, who signs your allowance?" James laughed, a deep, warm sound that filled the room. They looked perfect together. Powerful, balanced, untouchable, but perfect moments often hide cracks. "Good morning, Ma," a soft voice said. Ella entered quietly with a tray of fresh orange juice. Her uniform was neat, her hair pulled back simply. She kept her eyes lowered as she poured. Her hand shook. A drop of juice spilled onto the table. "Sorry, Ma," Ella whispered quickly, wiping it away. Adna barely noticed, except for one thing. Ella's eyes flicked, just for a second, toward James. Most people would have missed it. Adna didn't. "Are you all right?" Adna asked casually. "Yes, Ma," Ella replied too quickly. James stood, adjusting his watch. "I have an early meeting today." "I thought it was at 10, Adna said. James paused, just a fraction of a second. "They moved it," he said smoothly. "You know how these people are?" Adna nodded. He kissed her forehead and left, but the house felt heavier after he walked out. By noon, Adna's black Range Rover rolled into a crowded street far from her world of gates and security. Small shops lined the road. Children ran barefoot. Market women shouted prices into the air. Adna sat in the backseat, staring out the window. Ella had asked for time off earlier that week. Her voice had trembled. Her eyes had been red when she returned. Something felt wrong. "Take me to the address in her file," Adna told her driver. The car stopped in front of an aging building with peeling paint. Adna stepped out, holding a bag of food and an envelope of cash. She believed in seeing things with her own eyes. Ella answered the door wearing a simple gown, shock written across her face. "Ma, I was nearby," Adna said gently. "I thought I'd visit." Ella hesitated just long enough. Inside, the house was small but clean. Modest furniture, a Bible, a candle, and then Adna saw it, the photograph, her husband, on Ella's wall. That moment snapped the world in two. Back in the present, Ella's bowl finally slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a loud crack. "Ma," Ella whispered, tears spilling freely now, "James is not just your husband." Adna's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Ella's voice broke completely. "He is the reason my mother is dead." The room stopped breathing. The fan hummed, the stew boiled, children laughed outside. But inside, Adna felt her entire life tilt violently off balance. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Ella wiped her tears, shaking. I never wanted you to find out like this, she said. Please sit down. Adna didn't sit. Her eyes burned into Ella's. Start talking, she said, because whatever you say next will change everything. Ella took a trembling breath, and then she spoke the words that would tear the past wide open. Ella lifted her head slowly, her eyes full of pain and fear. James didn't kill my mother, she said, but what he did destroyed her life. And before Adna could ask another question, Ella added, and there's something else you don't know about him. Adana finally sat down, not because she wanted to, but because her legs no longer trusted her. The brown sofa creaked beneath her weight as she lowered herself slowly, her eyes never leaving Ella's face. The room felt smaller now, like the walls had moved closer to listen. Tell me everything, Adna said quietly, from the beginning. Don't protect him, don't protect me, just tell the truth. Ella nodded, her whole body trembling. She walked to the small wooden chair opposite Adna and sat carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter her. My mother's name was Amara, Ella began. She was kind, too kind for this world. Adna folded her hands together tightly. Years ago, Ella continued, before you met James, before the mansion, before the money, he was just a young man doing his internship. Adna's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. My mother worked as a cleaner in a company building, Ella said. She was poor. We lived in a single room, but she was proud. She believed hard work would save us. Ella swallowed. That's where she met him. Adna felt something sharp twist inside her chest. They talked, Ella said softly. At first it was innocent. He was polite. He listened to her. Sometimes he bought her lunch. Sometimes he walked her home. Ella laughed bitterly. You know how dangerous kindness can be when someone has nothing. Adna closed her eyes briefly. They became close, Ella continued. Too close. My mother never spoke badly of him, even at the end. She said he wasn't cruel, just young, afraid, and careless. Adna leaned forward. Did he know she was pregnant? She asked. Ella hesitated. She tried to tell him. The words landed heavy. She called him, Ella said. She waited outside his office. She wrote letters, but that same week he left the country. Adna's breath caught. She remembered those years. James had mentioned studying abroad, always brushing over it like a minor detail, something unimportant. He disappeared, Ella said. No goodbye, no explanation. Ella's fingers twisted together. My mother believed he didn't know, she added quickly. She told herself that lie so she could survive. Adna felt a deep ache spread through her chest, not anger yet, but something worse, recognition. And then, Adna asked, Ella's voice shook. Then came the watch. Adna stiffened. One day, Ella said, my mother came home crying harder than I'd ever seen. She said she had been accused of stealing an expensive wristwatch from a VIP client. Adna's heart skipped. She begged them to check the cameras, Ella continued. She begged them to call the man, but he didn't listen, he didn't care. Adna already knew the answer. It was James, Ella whispered. No, Adna breathed instinctively. James wouldn't. I'm not saying he meant to, Ella said quickly. But his word was final. My mother lost her job that day. Ella wiped her eyes. We lost everything after that, she said. Rent, food, medicine. Her voice broke completely. She fell sick, Ella whispered. Malaria. There was no money for treatment. Adna felt her throat tighten painfully. She died, Ella said simply, right here in this room. Silence swallowed the space between them. Adna stared at the floor, her vision blurring. But why the picture? She asked finally, her voice barely steady. Why keep his photograph? Ella looked up. My mother gave it to me, she said. She said, one day the truth will meet itself. Adna shook her head slowly. So you came into my house to wait? She asked. No, Ella said quickly. I didn't even know it was your house. When I saw him there for the first time, I almost fainted. Adna remembered Ella's fear, her silence, her obedience. You recognized him, Adna whispered. Yes, Ella nodded, and I stayed quiet. I didn't want to destroy your marriage. Something cracked inside Adna then, not loudly but deeply. Ella, Adna said slowly, why didn't you tell me? Ella hesitated. Because, she said softly, what I discovered later was even worse. Adna's head snapped up. Worse than this? She demanded. Ella's lips trembled. My mother told me something before she died, Ella said. Something she was never sure of, but something she believed. Adna's pulse thundered. What? She asked. Ella took a shaky breath. She said James might not only be the man who broke her heart. Adna felt ice spread through her veins. He might be my father. The room tilted. Adna grabbed the arm of the sofa as dizziness washed over her. That's impossible, she whispered. James would have known. I don't know if he knew, Ella replied. My mother said she tried to tell him, but he left. Adna shook her head repeatedly, like motion could undo the words. No, she whispered. No, this can't be real. Ella reached for the photograph on the wall and held it gently. I didn't keep this for revenge, she said. I kept it because I needed answers. Adna pressed her palm against her chest, trying to breathe. Her husband, her life, her marriage, all standing on a past she never knew existed. Just then, her phone rang. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Adna froze. She reached into her bag slowly, her fingers numb. James. Ella saw the screen and covered her mouth. The phone rang again. Adna answered. Hello, she said, forcing steadiness into her voice. Adna, James said, where are you? I came home early. Her heart pounded violently. There's something we need to talk about, James continued. Something from my past. Adna closed her eyes. Go on, she whispered. James hesitated. There was a woman, he said. Her name was Amara. Ella gasped. Adna's breath hitched. I think, James continued, his voice shaking, I may have a child. Adna opened her eyes slowly and looked straight at Ella. James's voice echoed through the phone. If that child is alive today, she would be about 24 years old. Adna turned fully toward Ella. Ella was 24, and the truth was no longer hiding. Adna ended the call without saying goodbye. The silence that followed was louder than any argument she had ever had in her marriage. Slowly, she lowered the phone into her bag. Her hands were shaking now, no point pretending otherwise. She looked at Ella, really looked at her, as if trying to rearrange her face into something familiar. James's possible daughter. The words felt unreal, like a bad line from a movie she never agreed to watch. Did you hear what he said? Adna asked quietly. Ella nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Yes, Ma. Neither woman moved. Outside, life continued without permission. Children shouted, someone laughed, a radio played in the distance. The world did not stop just because Adna's had cracked open. I didn't plan this, Ella whispered suddenly. I swear to you, I never planned for any of this. Adna inhaled slowly, forcing control back into her body. I believe you, she said. Ella looked up sharply. You do? Yes, Adna replied, because if you wanted to destroy me, you would have spoken long ago. That truth settled between them, heavy and undeniable. Ella wiped her face. James said he wanted to meet someone this evening, she said carefully. Did he tell you who? A woman from his past, Adna answered. Someone who claims she has the truth. Ella's hands clenched in her dress. Then everything is about to change. Before Adna could respond, a loud knock exploded against the door. Bam, 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 both women jumped. Ella's face drained of color. No, she whispered. Not now. Another knock, harder. Ella, a man's voice shouted from outside. Open this door. Adna rose to her feet instinctively. Who is that? She asked. Ella swallowed. My uncle. Fear crept into her voice. Please, Ma, he's not stable. If he sees you here. The knocking turned violent. Open this door now. Adna straightened her shoulders. I'm not hiding, she said firmly. Ella grabbed her arm. You don't understand. He hates rich people. He thinks they destroy lives. Adna met her eyes. Then let him look at one. Ella hesitated, then slowly unlocked the door. It flew open. A tall, broad man stormed in, smelling of sweat and alcohol. His eyes were wild, angry, scanning the room until they landed on Adna. He froze. Who is this? He demanded. Ella stepped forward quickly. Uncle, please, you brought outsiders into this house, he roared. You want trouble? Adna stepped between them. That's enough, she said calmly. The man turned toward her, shocked by her confidence. And who are you to speak? He snapped. Adna Anderson, she replied evenly. The name hit him like a slap. His anger faltered. James Anderson's wife. His shoulders sagged slightly, then he laughed bitterly. So, he muttered. The truth finally followed you here. Ella stared at him. Uncle, what do you mean? He rubbed his face with both hands, pacing the small room like a trapped animal. I warned your mother, he said harshly. I warned her about men like James. Ella's voice broke. You told her not to tell him. The man stopped pacing. Yes, he admitted, I did. Adna's breath caught. I told her rich men don't look back, he continued. I told her silence was safer. Ella collapsed onto the chair. She died, Ella sobbed. She died believing she was alone. I didn't know she would die, he shouted back. I thought she would survive. The room vibrated with decades of regret. Why hide this from me? Ella cried. Why hide my father from me? Her uncle's eyes filled with tears. Because hope would have destroyed you, he whispered. And I couldn't lose you too. Slowly, he reached into his pocket. There's something I kept, he said. Something your mother left. Ella looked up. He handed her a folded document. Her hands shook as she opened it. Adna leaned closer. It wasn't a letter, it was a birth certificate. Ella's breath caught violently. Under father's name, written in faded ink, James A. Ella let out a sound somewhere between a cry and a gasp. Adna's knees nearly buckled. The truth wasn't a theory anymore. It was ink, paper, fact. Ella sobbed uncontrollably as Adna wrapped her arms around her, holding her without thinking. No longer maid and employer, just two women crushed beneath the same man's past. Then the sound of a car engine rolled into the compound. A sleek black SUV stopped outside. Adna stiffened. A familiar voice called out. Adna, her heart stopped. James stepped into the compound. He took in the scene, the tears, the uncle, the document in Ella's hands, his face drained of all color. Adna, he whispered. What's happening? Adna stood slowly and held up the birth certificate. You tell me, she said, her voice shaking. James, is this your child? James stepped forward, his hands trembling as he took the paper. His knees gave out, he fell, not dramatically, quietly, like a man whose strength had finally abandoned him. My God, he whispered. Ella, the name tasted unfamiliar on his tongue. Tears streamed down his face. I was afraid, he said brokenly. I was young, I ran. Ella stared at him through her tears. I didn't want your money, she whispered. I just wanted the truth. James nodded repeatedly. I know, he sobbed, and I failed you. Adna watched him, this man she loved, this stranger she married, this father who never showed up. Her heart split in two. Then James looked up at her. I will fix this, he said desperately. I swear. Adna's voice was steady but cold. You don't fix the past, she said. You face it. Before James could reply, another voice cut through the air. You're all too late. Everyone turned. A woman stood at the gate, older, calm, watching them like a judge. The truth you're fighting over, she said quietly. I brought it years ago. She stepped forward and added, and James, what you think you know about Amara's death is only half the story. The woman at the gate did not rush. She didn't need to. Silence followed her words like a shadow, heavy and suffocating. Everyone in the compound turned toward her, drawn by the calm authority in her voice. Adna was the first to speak. Who are you? She asked. The woman stepped forward slowly. She was in her late 50s, dressed simply, her face lined not with weakness but with endurance. Her eyes, sharp and steady, rested on James. My name is Ruth, she said. I worked with Amara. James rose slowly from the ground, his face pale. You knew her? He asked. Ruth gave a sad smile. Better than you did. Ella tightened her grip on the birth certificate. Her voice trembled. You said the truth is only half known. What do you mean? Ruth looked at Ella with something like sorrow. Your mother didn't die only because she lost her job, Ruth said. That was just the beginning. James shook his head. I didn't know she was fired, I swear. I believe you, Ruth interrupted. But ignorance doesn't erase consequences. She turned toward Adna. Your husband wasn't cruel, Ruth said, but he was careless, and his carelessness created a chain he never bothered to look back at. James bowed his head. After Amara lost her job, Ruth continued, she tried to survive. She came to me, she was already sick. Ella's breathing grew shallow. She told me everything, Ruth said. About you, James, about the baby, about the letters you never answered. James's voice broke. I never saw them. Ruth nodded. I know because someone made sure you didn't. All eyes turned to Ella's uncle. He stiffened. What are you saying? Adna asked sharply. Ruth looked directly at him. You intercepted the letters. The uncle's face twisted. I was protecting her. You were controlling her, Ruth snapped. You decided what truth she was allowed to live with. Ella stood up suddenly. Uncle, is this true? Her uncle collapsed onto a chair. Yes, he whispered. I took them. I didn't want James coming back and confusing her life. James staggered back a step. You kept my letters from me, he said hoarsely. You let me believe she vanished. And you let yourself believe it, Ruth said calmly. Because it was easier. James had no answer. Ruth turned back to Ella. Amara didn't just die from illness, she said gently. She died believing her child would grow up unwanted. Ella's tears fell silently now, no sobbing, just devastation. She named you, Ruth added softly, so that one day if the truth ever surfaced, you would be remembered. Ella pressed her hand to her mouth. Adna felt something in her chest loosen and ache at the same time. So all of this, Adna said slowly, was built on silence. Yes, Ruth replied, and silence always collects interest. James stepped toward Ella, stopping a few feet away. I can't undo what I did, he said quietly. But I want to be here now if you allow it. Ella looked at him for a long moment. You don't get to demand forgiveness, she said, but you get a chance to tell the truth. James nodded. Adna watched them, father and daughter, standing in fragile proximity and felt a question burning inside her. And me? She asked. James turned toward her, guilt flooding his face. I should have told you before we married, he said. I was afraid. Adna exhaled slowly. Fear doesn't excuse deception, she replied, but honesty decides what survives next. Ruth stepped back. My job here is done, she said. The truth has finally arrived where it belongs. She walked away, leaving them standing with everything exposed. Ella's uncle covered his face. I was wrong, he whispered. I wanted control, not protection. Ella didn't answer him. James finally looked at Adna fully. I don't know what this means for us, he said. Adna met his gaze, steady, wounded, but unbroken. It means, she said, that lies are done ruling this family. She turned to Ella. You are not my maid anymore, Adna said quietly. You never were. Ella looked up, shocked. You are part of this story, Adna continued. And this story doesn't end with shame. Ella's lips trembled. I don't know where I belong. Adna reached out and took her hand. Neither do I, she said, so we'll figure it out without hiding. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the compound. For the first time, nothing was hidden in them. But as they stood together, phones buzzing, hearts racing, one truth became clear. Facing the past was only the beginning. As Adna turned toward the gate, a single thought froze her steps. The truth didn't just change James's past. It threatened to destroy their future. Night fell slowly, like it was unsure whether it should witness what came next. The compound emptied in silence. Ruth had gone. The children outside had drifted home. Even the street noises softened, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Only 4 people remained inside the small house. Adna, James, Ella, and the uncle, now seated in a corner, reduced to a quiet, broken shadow of the man who had once controlled everything. No one spoke for a long time. Truth has a way of doing that. Once it lands, words become heavy and dangerous. Adna was the first to break the silence. We're leaving, she said calmly, picking up her bag. James looked up. Together, Adna paused. I didn't say that, she replied. The words cut clean and precise. James nodded slowly. He deserved that much honesty. Ella stood near the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. Ma, Adna, she corrected herself quickly. I don't want to cause more damage. Adna turned to her. You didn't cause this, she said firmly. You survived it. Ella's eyes filled again. I don't know what happens to me now. James took a step forward. You come with us. Ella flinched. I don't want pity. This isn't pity, Adna said. It's responsibility. James looked at Adna, surprised. You're serious? He asked. Yes, Adna replied. But understand this, what we're doing isn't pretending everything is fine. She looked directly at him. It's facing consequences. James swallowed. I'll accept whatever you decide. Adna studied him for a long moment. This man she loved, this man who failed, this man who ran and then built a new life without looking back. I won't decide tonight, she said finally, because decisions made in shock are rarely honest. She turned to Ella again. You're coming with us, Adna said, not as staff, not as charity, as family finding its shape. Ella nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks without resistance. They left the house together. The mansion felt different that night, too large, too quiet. Ella stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure where to place herself. James hovered nearby, unsure whether to approach her or keep distance. Adna watched them both from the staircase. Everything had changed, but nothing had been decided yet. Ella, Adna said, you'll take the guest room. Ella hesitated. I don't want to. You will, Adna interrupted gently. Not because you owe me, because you deserve rest. Later that night, Adna sat alone in her bedroom. James knocked softly. May I come in? He asked. She nodded. James stood near the door like a guest in his own marriage. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly. I don't even know if I deserve a place here anymore. Adna looked at him. Forgiveness is not a gift, she said. It's a process, he nodded. I will acknowledge Ella publicly, James said. I'll change my will, I'll take responsibility. Adna's expression didn't soften, but it steadied. That's not for me, she replied. That's for her, James hesitated. And us, Adna exhaled slowly. Us, she said, depends on who you choose to be now, not who you were. Weeks passed. The story broke quietly, not through gossip, but through deliberate truth. James acknowledged Ella as his daughter. Lawyers were involved, papers were signed. The world reacted with curiosity, judgment, and speculation. But inside the house, something else happened. Ella began to breathe. She enrolled in school again. She laughed, hesitantly at first, then more freely. She stopped apologizing for existing. And Adna watched her with something unfamiliar growing in her chest. Not resentment, not jealousy, but empathy. One evening, Ella stood beside Adna on the balcony. I used to think rich people were untouchable, Ella said softly. Like gods, Adna smiled faintly. We bleed quietly, that's all. Ella hesitated. Do you hate me? The question landed gently but deeply. Adna turned to her fully. No, she said. I hate what silence did to all of us. Ella nodded. And James? Ella asked carefully. Adna looked out into the night. I'm still listening, she said. That's the most honest answer I can give. Months later, Adna stood in her office, staring at the city below. James knocked. I've accepted the board's decision, he said. I'm stepping down from some roles. I need to rebuild my name, not hide behind yours. Adna turned. That's wise, she said. He hesitated. And us? Adna walked toward him slowly. We're not broken, she said. But we are changed. She held his gaze. If we continue, she added, it will be as equals who know each other fully. James nodded. I can live with that. On Ella's graduation day, Adna sat in the front row. James sat beside her. Ella walked across the stage, confident and proud, not hidden, not erased, not silent. When she looked at them, her smile held no anger, only truth. Adna clapped, feeling something close to peace. Not the peace of perfect endings, but the peace of honest ones. Some secrets destroy families. Others rebuild them, slowly, painfully, truth by truth. And sometimes the greatest power is not wealth, not love, not forgiveness, but the courage to finally stop lying.